My dad ditched my wedding for my brother's camping trip, so I replaced him with a real father figure. And he returned to a scene he'll never forget. I never thought the most important day of my life would be the day I realized I meant absolutely nothing to my own father. Until I watched him walk away from my wedding to go camping with his favorite son. My name is Jonathan Pierce, I'm 30 years old and I work as a construction engineer. For most of my life I believed I was the golden child. I was the firstborn, the responsible one, the son who made my father Gerald proud with every achievement. But that illusion started cracking when my younger brother Mason was born 5 years later, and it completely shattered on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Growing up, Dad and I had this incredible bond. He taught me how to throw a baseball, helped me with my math homework, and always bragged to his friends about his brilliant boy who was going to be an engineer. I remember the way his eyes lit up when I graduated valedictorian from high school, how he stood up and cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium. "That's my son!" he shouted, and I felt like I could conquer the world. But things started changing subtly after Mason came along. At first, I didn't mind. He was just a baby after all, and babies need attention. I was the mature big brother who helped change diapers and read bedtime stories. Dad would ruffle my hair and say, "Thanks for being such a good helper, Jonathan. You're the best big brother Mason could ask for." As Mason grew older, though, I began noticing small shifts. When I won the state science fair in 8th grade, Dad's congratulations felt rushed because Mason had just taken his first steps the same day. When I got accepted to engineering school with a partial scholarship, the celebration dinner somehow became about Mason's Little League tryouts the next week. Each time, I told myself it was just coincidence, that Dad was still proud of me. The pattern became more obvious during my college years. I'd call home excited about landing an internship at a prestigious firm, only to have Dad cut the conversation short because Mason had a soccer game. I'd come home for holidays with stories about my projects and achievements, but somehow the conversation always drifted to Mason's latest accomplishments. His art projects, his friends, his teenage adventures. "Mason's so creative," Dad would say, showing me yet another one of my brother's paintings. "He has this artistic soul, you know. He sees the world differently than the rest of us." I tried not to let it bother me. After all, I was the successful one. I had graduated magna cum laude, landed a great job, bought my own apartment. I was building the stable, responsible life Dad had always said he wanted for me. Surely that counted for something. When I started dating Sarah 3 years ago, I was excited to bring her home to meet the family. She was everything I'd ever wanted: smart, funny, kind, and beautiful. She worked as a pediatric nurse and had this amazing way of lighting up every room she entered. I knew Dad would love her, and he did, at first. He welcomed her warmly, asked about her work, and even joked that I'd finally found someone good enough to put up with me. But I noticed that whenever Sarah and I talked about our relationship, our future plans, or our careers, Dad's attention would inevitably wander to whatever Mason was doing. If Mason walked through the room, Dad's focus would shift completely. "Mason's thinking about studying abroad next semester," he'd interrupt while Sarah was telling a story about her patients. "He wants to paint the European countryside, isn't that some—" Sarah noticed it too, though she was too polite to say anything at first. It was only after several family visits that she gently mentioned how Dad seemed to have a special connection with Mason. "It's like he sees himself in your brother," she said carefully. "The artistic, free-spirited side he maybe never got to explore." I brushed off her observation, but deep down, I knew she was right. Dad had always been practical, methodical, traits he'd passed on to me. But with Mason, he seemed to live vicariously through this creative, spontaneous spirit he'd never allowed himself to have. The real wake-up call came last Christmas. I'd been planning to propose to Sarah for months. I'd saved up for the perfect ring, coordinated with her family, and arranged for a romantic proposal on Christmas Eve in front of our families. I was so excited to share this moment with Dad, to see his face when I asked for his blessing. But when Christmas Eve arrived, Dad was distracted and distant. Mason had decided at the last minute to enter a local art competition, and Dad was consumed with helping him prepare his portfolio. "This could be Mason's big break," Dad kept saying, barely glancing at the ring when I tried to show it to him privately. "You understand, right, Jonathan? This timing is just incredible for his career." I proposed to Sarah that night as planned, and she said yes through happy tears. Our families cheered and celebrated. but I couldn't shake the feeling that Dad was only half present. Even during the toasts, his phone kept buzzing with updates about Mason's art submission. "I'm so proud of you, son," Dad said when he hugged me, but his eyes were already drifting toward his phone screen. When Sarah and I started planning our wedding, I was determined to make Dad a central part of the celebration. Despite everything, he was still my father, and I wanted him to feel important and included. I asked him to walk me down the aisle, to give a speech at the reception about his firstborn son, and to save me a dance during the father-son portion of the evening. Dad agreed enthusiastically to everything. "Of course, Jonathan. I wouldn't miss it for the world. This is such an important day for our family." For months, he seemed genuinely excited about the wedding. He helped us scout venues, offered to contribute financially, and even volunteered to help with some of the setup. I started to feel like maybe I'd been overthinking things, that this wedding would be the event that brought us back to our old closeness. Sarah and I poured our hearts into planning every detail. We chose a beautiful outdoor venue overlooking the lake, arranged for her favorite flowers, and carefully selected a menu that would please both families. I wrote and rewrote my vows a dozen times, wanting them to be perfect. This was going to be our dream day, surrounded by everyone we loved most. 3 weeks before the wedding, Mason mentioned that he wanted to go on a camping trip. "There's this amazing spot in the mountains I've been wanting to paint," he told us over Sunday dinner. "The light there in early autumn is supposed to be incredible. I'm thinking of going the weekend after next." I didn't think much of it. The weekend after next was our wedding weekend, but Mason hadn't specified exact dates. He'd always been spontaneous with his plans. But then Dad's face lit up with an excitement I hadn't seen in years. "That sounds amazing, son. You know, I haven't been camping in decades. Would you mind if your old man tagged along? I could help carry equipment, set up camp, maybe even try my hand at some nature photography." Mason grinned. "That would be awesome, Dad. We could make it a real father-son adventure." A cold pit formed in my stomach. "Wait," I said slowly. "What weekend are we talking about exactly?" "October 14th and 15th, Mason said casually. "Why?" "October 15th, my wedding day." The room went silent. Sarah's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. Mom looked mortified. "Mason, honey," Mom said carefully. "That's Jonathan and Sarah's wedding weekend." Mason's face went pale. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I completely spaced on the date. Of course I wouldn't go then. Let me pick a different weekend." But Dad was already shaking his head. "Actually, son, I think that weekend might work perfectly. Jonathan, you'll be so busy with wedding stuff, you won't even notice I'm gone for one night. And Mason's been planning this trip. I don't want him to have to reschedule because of a scheduling conflict." I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. A scheduling conflict? "Dad, it's my wedding." I know, but think about it practically. You'll have the rehearsal dinner on Friday, then you'll be getting ready all day Saturday. Sarah's father can walk her down the aisle if needed. And there will be so many people there giving speeches. One less speech won't matter. But you're my father. And I'll be back Sunday. We can celebrate then, just the family. Actually, that might be even nicer. More intimate, you know? I looked around the table. Mom was staring at Dad in disbelief. Sarah looked like she might cry. Mason was fidgeting uncomfortably, clearly wishing he'd never brought up the camping trip. "Gerald," Mom said sharply, "this is your son's wedding, your firstborn son's wedding. I know what it is, Linda, but it's one day and I'll be back the next day. Jonathan will understand. He's always been the reasonable one. The reasonable one. The responsible one. The one who would always understand, always accommodate, always put everyone else's needs before his own." "What if I don't understand?" I asked quietly. Dad looked surprised, as if the possibility of me objecting had never occurred to him. "Well, Jonathan, you're being a bit dramatic, don't you think? It's just one night." "It's not just one night, Dad. It's my wedding night. It's the most important day of my life. Most important day so far," he corrected with a forced chuckle. "You'll have lots of important days. But Mason's artistic window for this trip is very narrow. The lighting, the weather conditions, it all has to be perfect." I felt something break inside me at that moment. Not just my heart, but my entire understanding of my place in this family. My wedding, the culmination of 30 years of life, the celebration of finding my soulmate, the beginning of my own family, was being treated as less important than Mason's weekend painting trip. "I see," I said, my voice eerily calm. So Mason's art project takes priority over my wedding. That's not what I said. That's exactly what you said, Dad. You're choosing to miss my wedding so you can go camping with Mason. I'm not missing your wedding. I'm just not staying for the whole thing. Sarah squeezed my hand tighter. I could feel her trying to send me strength through her touch. The speech, Dad. You were supposed to give a speech about me. About being proud of your son. Dad waved dismissively. Speeches are overrated anyway. People just want to eat and dance. Trust me, no one will miss one speech. But I would miss it. I would miss having my father stand up in front of everyone we cared about and say he was proud of me. I would miss that moment of validation I'd been craving my entire life. What if Mason rescheduled? I asked desperately. Just moved it one weekend in either direction? Mason immediately nodded. Of course. John, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize. No, Dad interrupted firmly. Mason shouldn't have to rearrange his plans because of poor communication. The trip is already planned. Jonathan, you're being selfish. Selfish. I was being selfish for wanting my father at my wedding. I looked at this man who had raised me, who had taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework and cheered at my graduation. When had I become such a burden to him? When had my happiness become so secondary to Mason's whims? Okay, I said simply. Everyone stared at me. Okay, Dad, go on your camping trip, miss my wedding. I understand where your priorities are. Jonathan, don't be like that. You're twisting this into something it's not. But I was already standing up, helping Sarah to her feet. We should go. We have a lot of wedding planning to finish up. As we gathered our things, I could hear Mom and Dad starting to argue behind us. Mason was trying to interject, saying he could reschedule, that it wasn't a big deal. But Dad remained firm. The camping trip was happening. In the car, Sarah was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. I'm so sorry, Jonathan. It's not your fault. I know, but I'm sorry you're going through this. I'm sorry your father is making this choice. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. If I opened my mouth, I might start crying, and I wasn't ready for that yet. What do you want to do? She asked gently. I thought about that question for the rest of the week. What did I want to do? I could beg Dad to reconsider, could appeal to his sense of duty and love. I could guilt him into staying, could make him choose between his sons explicitly. I could postpone the wedding, could reschedule everything to accommodate his camping trip. But I didn't want to do any of those things. I didn't want to have to convince my father that I was worth prioritizing. I didn't want to compete with Mason for Dad's attention on my own wedding day. And I sure as hell didn't want to reschedule my wedding around a camping trip. Instead, I did something that felt both liberating and terrifying. I accepted it. I called Dad the next Friday, 1 week before the wedding. Dad, I wanted to confirm that you won't be at the wedding tomorrow. Well, I'll be there for the ceremony, but will you be there for the reception? For the speeches? For the father-son dance? A pause. Probably not, son. The camping spot is pretty remote and Mason wants to capture the sunset lighting. Okay. Then I need to make some adjustments to the program. What kind of adjustments? Your speech has been removed from the lineup. The father-son dance has been canceled, and I've asked Sarah's father, Mr. Thompson, to escort me down the aisle instead. Another longer pause. Jonathan, you're being dramatic again. I'm being practical, Dad. You taught me that. If you can't fulfill the role of father of the groom, then I need to find someone who can. I'm still your father. Are you? Because fathers show up for their children's important moments. Fathers prioritize their children's happiness. Fathers don't abandon their sons on their wedding day to go camping. It's one night, Jonathan. It's my wedding night, Dad, and you chose Mason over me. Again, I hung up before he could respond. Sarah found me sitting on our couch an hour later, staring at nothing. How do you feel? She asked, curling up next to me. Empty, I said honestly. But also, free? Does that make sense? She nodded. It makes perfect sense. You finally stopped trying to be the son he wanted and started being yourself. That night, I called Mr. Thompson, Sarah's father, who had been nothing but kind and supportive throughout our entire relationship. He was a quiet man, a retired accountant with kind eyes and a gentle sense of humor. He'd been more excited about our wedding than my own father had been. Mr. Thompson, I have a strange request. Call me Bill's son. What can I do for you? I explained the situation, feeling embarrassed and heartbroken all over again. But Bill listened without judgment. making sympathetic sounds at all the right moments. "I'd be honored to walk you down the aisle, Jonathan," he said when I finished. "And if you'd like, I'd be happy to give a speech about the young man I've come to love like my own son." I started crying then. This man, who had known me for only 3 years, was willing to step into the role my own father had abandoned. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you so much. Thank you for asking me. Sarah's going to be so moved when she hears about this." The morning of my wedding dawned crisp and clear, with golden sunlight filtering through the autumn leaves. It was exactly the kind of perfect October day Sarah and I had dreamed of. I woke up feeling strangely calm, more peaceful than I'd felt in weeks. I got ready at the hotel with my groomsmen, my college roommates, a few work friends, and Mason, who had decided to skip the camping trip after all. He'd been quieter than usual all morning, clearly feeling guilty about the whole situation. "John," he said as I was adjusting my tie, "I'm really sorry about Dad. I tried to talk to him again last night, but he's being stubborn." "It's not your fault, Mason. This isn't about you." "But it kind of is, isn't it? He's always choosing me over you, and I never asked for that." I looked at my little brother, 25 years old now, but still the kid who used to follow me around asking if he could help with my projects. He looked miserable. "Mason, listen to me. Dad makes his own choices. You can't control them, and neither can I. All we can control is how we respond to them. How are you responding to them?" I straightened my tie and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked good, happy, confident, ready to marry the woman I loved. I'm choosing to focus on what matters. Today is about Sarah and me starting our life together. It's about celebrating with the people who truly love and support us. And it's about realizing that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when it counts. Mason hugged me then, a real hug, not one of those awkward side pat things we usually did. "I love you, big brother, and I'm proud of you." "I love you too, Mason, always." The ceremony was beautiful. Bill Thompson walked me down the aisle with such dignity and pride that several guests later commented on what a loving father-in-law I had. Sarah looked absolutely radiant in her dress, and when we said our vows, I meant every word with my entire heart. Dad was notably absent from the front row. Mom sat alone on the groom's side, looking embarrassed and sad. A few relatives kept glancing at the empty seat next to her and whispering among themselves. But I barely noticed. I was too focused on Sarah, on the joy in her eyes, on the incredible feeling of promising to spend my life with my best friend. Bill's steady presence beside me was exactly what I needed. Calm, supportive, unwavering. The reception was held in a beautiful pavilion overlooking the lake. The tables were decorated with autumn flowers, candles flickered in the gathering dusk, and our friends and family filled the space with laughter and conversation. Sarah and I made our rounds, greeting guests and accepting congratulations. Everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time. When it came time for the speeches, I stood up first to address our guests. "Sarah and I want to thank everyone for being here with us tonight," I began. "When we were planning this wedding, we talked a lot about what it means to celebrate with the people you love. We realized that the most important thing isn't having everyone you're related to here. It's having everyone who truly cares about your happiness here." I glanced at Mom, who was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Some people show their love through their presence, through their support, through their willingness to prioritize what matters to you. Tonight, we're surrounded by those people. We're surrounded by family. Not just the family we were born into, but the family we've chosen, and the family that has chosen us. I raised my glass toward Bill Thompson, who was sitting at the head table with a proud smile on his face. "I want to make a special thank you to Bill Thompson, who stepped up today to fill a role that needed filling. Bill, you've shown me what it means to be a father figure, not through obligation but through love. You've supported Sarah and me from the beginning, and today you walked me down the aisle with more pride and joy than I could have asked for. Thank you for showing me that family is about who shows up, not who shares your DNA." The applause was thunderous. I could see people nodding, understanding exactly what I was talking about. Bill stood up and raised his own glass toward me, his eyes moist with emotion. Mason gave a beautiful speech about brotherly love and how proud he was to see me so happy. Sarah's maid of honor told embarrassing stories that had everyone laughing. Bill spoke about gaining a son and promised to love me like his own child. As the evening wound down, it was time for the traditional dances. Sarah and I had our first dance as a married couple to At Last by Etta James. Then came the father-daughter dance. Sarah and Bill swaying to butterfly kisses while everyone watched with happy tears. And then it was time for the father-son dance. Except there was no father-son dance on the program anymore. Instead, I walked over to Bill Thompson and extended my hand. "Bill, would you honor me with this dance? I can't think of anyone I'd rather share this moment with." The entire reception went silent. Bill's face showed surprise, then deep emotion, then pure joy. "I would be honored, son." As we moved onto the dance floor, the DJ played My Wish by Rascal Flatts, a song about wanting the best for someone you love. Bill and I weren't the most graceful dancers, but it didn't matter. What mattered was the moment, the connection, the choice to create new traditions when old ones failed us. I could see Sarah crying happy tears at our table. Mason was watching with a mixture of admiration and sadness. Mom was sobbing into her napkin. And that's when I saw him. Dad was standing at the edge of the pavilion, still in his camping clothes, hiking boots, flannel shirt, baseball cap. He looked like he'd driven straight from the mountains without stopping to change. His face was a mask of shock and regret, as he watched me dancing with another man in the role that should have been his. Our eyes met across the dance floor. I saw him mouth the word Jonathan, but I didn't acknowledge him. I just kept dancing with Bill, kept smiling, kept celebrating this moment with the man who had earned the right to be here. When the song ended, I hugged Bill tightly. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." "Thank you for letting me be part of your family," he whispered back. As we left the dance floor, I could see Dad making his way through the crowd toward me. Several relatives tried to stop him, probably to ask where he'd been, but he brushed past them with single-minded determination. "Jonathan," he said when he reached me, his voice urgent and desperate. "Son, I need to talk to you." I looked at him calmly. He was dusty from the road, his hair messed up from driving with the windows down. He looked exactly like what he was, a man who had rushed back from something else, who had arrived late to his own son's wedding. "Hello, Dad. How was the camping trip?" "Jonathan, please. I made a mistake. I should have been here. I should have walked you down the aisle. I should have given a speech. I should have danced with you." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have. I'm here now. Can we still do the father-son dance? I know it's late, but..." "No, Dad, we can't." His face crumpled. "Please, son. Let me make this right. You can't make this right. You weren't here when I needed you. Bill was..." "You made your choice and I made mine. I chose wrong. I see that now. Watching you dance with him, seeing how happy you looked. I've been such a fool." I felt a strange sense of detachment, like I was watching this conversation happen to someone else. The desperate man in front of me was my father, but he felt like a stranger. "Dad, I spent 30 years trying to earn your attention, your approval, your love. I compromised myself, accommodated everyone else's needs, and convinced myself that I was being the good son by never asking for what I needed. You are the good son. You're the best son a father could ask for. If that's true, then why wasn't I worth staying for? Why was Mason's art project more important than my wedding?" Dad opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. We both knew there was no good answer to that question. "I don't know," he said finally. "I honestly don't know. I think I got so caught up in Mason's dreams because they reminded me of dreams I never pursued, and I took you for granted because you were always so capable, so independent. I thought you didn't need me. Everyone needs their father. Dad, especially on their wedding day. I know that now. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I looked at this man who had raised me, who had shaped so much of who I became. I felt sorry for him, but I didn't feel angry anymore. Anger required caring, and I was surprised to discover that I didn't care as much as I thought I would. "I accept your apology, Dad, but I want you to understand something. This isn't just about missing my wedding. This is about a pattern that's been going on for years. This is about always putting Mason first, always treating my achievements as less important, always expecting me to understand and accommodate everyone else's needs. I didn't realize. I know you didn't realize. That's the problem. It never occurred to you to consider how your choices affected me. And now, when the consequences of those choices are staring you in the face, you want to fix everything with an apology." Dad looked around the reception, at the happy faces of our guests, at the beautiful decorations, at the life Sarah and I had built together. His eyes lingered on Bill Thompson, who was chatting with Sarah's mother and laughing at something she'd said. "He's a good man," Dad said quietly. "Yes, he is. He's the father figure I needed today. Can you forgive me? I considered the question seriously. Could I forgive him? Did I want to? I can forgive you, Dad. But I can't forget. And I can't pretend that things can go back to the way they were. What does that mean? It means that from now on, our relationship is going to be different. It means I'm not going to bend over backward to accommodate your preferences or compete for your attention. It means that Sarah and I are going to build our own family traditions, with people who prioritize us the way we prioritize them. Dad nodded slowly, understanding beginning to dawn on his face. Does that mean, am I not invited to future family events? You're invited to everything, Dad, but you're not the centerpiece anymore. You're not the default person we turn to for support or guidance. You'll have to earn your place in our lives, the same way everyone else does. I could see that this was not the conversation Dad had expected to have. He'd probably imagined rushing in, apologizing and having everything go back to normal. But normal was the problem. Normal was what had brought us to this point. I understand, he said finally. I don't like it, but I understand. Sarah appeared at my side, slipping her hand into mine. She'd been watching our conversation from across the room, ready to intervene if I needed her. Mr. Pierce, she said politely, I didn't expect to see you tonight. Dad's face flushed. Sarah, I owe you an apology too. This should have been a perfect day for you, and I ruined it with my absence. You didn't ruin anything, Sarah said firmly. This was a perfect day. We were surrounded by people who love and support us. We celebrated with family, the family that chose to be here. Her message was clear, and Dad understood it. I hope I can still be part of your family, he said uncertainly. Sarah looked at me, letting me take the lead. Time will tell, Dad. Actions matter more than words. As the reception wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself reflecting on the entire day. Despite Dad's dramatic appearance and the emotional confrontation, I felt genuinely happy. Sarah and I had celebrated our love with people who truly cared about us. We'd created new traditions, forged deeper connections, and started our marriage exactly the way we wanted to. Mason came up to me as we were packing up the gifts. John, I just wanted to say, what you did tonight was incredible. The way you handled Dad, the way you honored Mr. Thompson, the way you stood up for yourself. I've never been more proud to be your brother. Thanks, Mason. That means a lot. I also wanted you to know that I'm going to have a conversation with Dad about all of this. About the pattern you mentioned, about how he's treated you over the years. He needs to hear it from me too. I hugged my little brother, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. I love you, Mason. None of this changes that. I love you too. And I promise I'm going to do better. I'm going to make sure Dad does better too. 6 months later, Sarah and I received a letter from Dad. It was handwritten, several pages long, and more honest than any conversation we'd ever had. He wrote about his own childhood, about dreams he'd given up, about how he'd seen himself in Mason's artistic ambitions, and had projected his own regrets onto our relationship. He acknowledged the pattern of favoritism, apologized for years of taking me for granted, and asked for a chance to rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. The letter was a good start, but it was only a start. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. Dad had to learn to show up consistently, to prioritize our relationship, to treat me as an equal rather than as someone who would automatically accommodate his needs. Slowly, gradually, he began to do better. He called regularly to check in, not just when he needed something. He remembered important dates. He asked about my work with genuine interest rather than distracted politeness. When Sarah and I bought our first house, he offered to help with the move, and actually showed up. But the most significant change was in my own attitude. I stopped trying to earn his love and started expecting it as my right. I stopped accommodating his preferences at my own expense and started asserting my own needs. I stopped competing with Mason for Dad's attention and started building my own independent relationship with him. Bill Thompson became the father figure I'd always needed. He and I developed our own traditions, monthly dinners, occasional fishing trips, long conversations about life and marriage and dreams. He was the one I called when I got a promotion at work. He was the one who helped me pick out Sarah's birthday present. He was the one who would walk Sarah down the aisle if we ever renewed our vows. And when Sarah and I had our first child 2 years later, Bill was in the delivery room waiting room while Dad was at home, unsure if he was welcome at such an important moment. Would you like to hold your granddaughter? I asked Bill when I brought baby Emma out to meet the family. "Granddaughter?" he asked, his eyes filling with tears. "Family isn't just about blood, remember? You're her grandfather in every way that matters." As I watched Bill cradle my daughter with the wonder and joy that every grandparent should show, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. My wedding day had been the end of one relationship with my father and the beginning of another. It had been the day I stopped trying to be the son someone else wanted me to be and started being the man I was meant to be. Dad eventually met Emma too, and he's trying to be a better grandfather than he was a father. But he's not her primary grandfather. That role belongs to the man who earned it through love, consistency, and presence. I spent 30 years searching for my father's approval, trying to make him proud, hoping he would prioritize me the way I prioritized him. But in the end, I found something better. I found a father figure who chose me, who valued me, who showed up when it mattered. I learned that family isn't about obligation or blood relation. It's about love, respect, and mutual support. The man who was supposed to walk me down the aisle on my wedding day chose to go camping instead. But the man who did walk me down the aisle chose love over convenience, chose presence over absence, chose me when my own father wouldn't. And that, I realized, made all the difference in the world. Sometimes the family that matters most isn't the one you're born into. It's the one that chooses to show up for the moments that define your life. My father taught me that lesson on my wedding day, though not in the way he intended. And for that unexpected gift, wrapped in disappointment and tied with abandonment, I find myself strangely grateful. Because in losing the father I thought I needed, I found the father I actually deserved.